Good evening and welcome back to another live episode of the Red Tinted Glasses podcast. Well, this could be a interesting one, I think is safe to say, as the Dons crashed out. Well, I don't even know if crashed out is a fair assessment. We really went out the cup with a whimper yesterday in 1-0 defeat to Motherwell as they progressed to Hampden in a fully deserved victory for the Steelmen. Looking back on the events of yesterday's game with me, delighted to be rejoined once again by Andy Skinner. Andy, welcome back. How are you doing?
All good, thanks, Glen. Thanks for having me on. It's going to be an interesting discussion. I suspect was not in the best of moods last night when you reached out about coming on here. I think I'll share the two conditions that you granted me. One, can I swear? And two, am I allowed to have a wee beer while I'm recording? And the answer was yes to both. So here we are.
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be some swearing going on. We're doing our best to remain as level-headed and composed as possible. Yeah. I did see Colin Gale in the comments already saying just try and breathe and relax because it's maybe too soon to be doing a live reaction to yesterday's defeat. But
yeah,
of course, with the game on Tuesday night coming up, it's about the quickest we've got to turn it out and get an episode out for you all to digest ahead of that trip to Dandies. So on tonight's live episode, or tomorrow if you're catching up on Monday as you head to work, we will be, as I said, reviewing the action from yesterday's game, discussing Jimmy Thelin future, because that seems to be a hot topic of discussion just now. And the team selection is also back on this episode, again, given a lot of the talk around some of the individual performances, not just the manager that's coming under scrutiny. We'll try our best to pick an 11 for that Dundee United game as well. But if we look at the 11 that Jimmy Thelin picked for the game yesterday, Skinner, Sivert Nielsen dropped, probably as most were hoping for, certainly from the fan base. Stuart Armstrong coming in to replace him in just that one change from the previous game. Do you think that decision, because listening certainly to Jimmy's pre-match conference, it was very much a staunch defence of Sivert and speaking about his work ethic and installing that. Do you think it was a decision made to appease fans, or there was a little bit of tactical decision behind that?
There might be an element of, appeasing the fan base. And the fact that Nielsen didn't make any appearance off the bench yesterday would fuel that potentially. But I don't know, maybe, his comments that he made, to the local press were done knowing that he was going to drop him, and he was almost trying to, keep the players' confidence up and issue that sort of big defence of him amidst all the flack he's been taking recently. I was on board with what Jimmy did regards his team selection. I thought the team should have been capable of delivering by bringing Armstrong in, albeit short of match fitness. You add legs to the midfield and experience and composure at the expense of Nielsen. So I didn't have any grumbles with the fact that was one change made from the team that drew with Livingston.
Yeah, neither did I, to be honest. And I think, largely it was the change most of us were expecting. The replacement obviously was open for interpretation. I thought Stuart Armstrong largely had a decent game. Yeah, okay, at the start it was nervy. There was the back pass to Donington that went out for a corner and a couple other slack passes I remember. But, nothing that I thought was criminally poor in comparison to other players. But there was large periods, because we can speak about recruitment. And I think the recruitment over the course of the summer has been decent. Jimmy is now getting his own stamp on this team. But we had questions around this last season as well. And, he is a season and a bit into his tenure here at Aberdeen, and yet probably still doesn't know his best starting 11. Is that fair to say?
It would certainly appear so, yeah. Certainly doesn't know the best use for a number of players that are in there. There's an awful lot of wasted talent that's not really being, given the chance to flourish in this system, in this squad. you see an awful lot of, substitutions en masse. It tends to happen every week. Round about the hour mark, you just get this big flurry of 5 subs, not all in one go, but within a kind of 10-minute window. And it does scream a little bit of, throwing shit at the wall and hoping something sticks, there doesn't often appear to be much method in it. I mean, you can make individual cases for each sub that's made, but it's certainly not a team that's picking itself right now, and there's a strong case to be made to change it up. But we've seen that already this season. I mean, he has changed it at times, but without really affecting the overall performance of the team and our ability to look like scoring and creating chances. It's very, very alarming, as Ross Duncan says there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Ross Duncan saying for a manager not to know his best team at this stage is alarming. We're 2 months into the season with a couple of quite big away games coming up this week. And another comment from Stephen Burns, his opinion is it's a bunch of players currently, not a team. You look at the way Graham Shinnie reacted to being subbed yesterday. I'm sure it's a bit of personal frustration. His head flung back and armband off and kind of trudging off the pitch. For me, that was the most kind of telling gesture. He was visibly frustrated, visibly upset, I'm sure, at being taken off with the game in the balance as it was at that stage when he was taken off. I think it was still 0-0 actually at that point. But for me, it sent out a poor message when your captain's acting in that manner. I want to kind of maybe get your opinion on that comment there from Stephen about that it looks like a bunch of players rather than a team, because I know we were discussing last night and you maybe share a little bit of that.
Well, on the Shinnie one in particular, were we 1-0 down at that point when he came off, or was that prior to the goal? I can't actually remember. The goal was about 62 minutes, I think. But either way, I mean, I would expect, when a game is in the balance and, you're trying to find a way back into it and trying to find a way to the semi-finals of a cup competition, Shinnie is the type of driving force that ought to be on the pitch, I think. It's a strange one, because it maybe might have been better actually not having Shinnie in the starting lineup and bringing him on for that last 20 minutes. I think he would have been more used to us, and I think there was maybe an acknowledgement from Shinnie himself that, geez, I've got something that I can really give to this cause that wasn't going to happen. So I can see his frustration. I don't think he threw the toys out the pram as such. It wasn't over the top or anything, but I suppose it's good to see in some forms as well. But certainly I thought we were completely devoid of leadership in the crucial part of the game when we were trying to engineer an equaliser. And the fact Shinnie wasn't there was noticeable.
I just went and actually double checked. He was actually taken off 3 minutes before Motherwell scored. That was, as you said, the bulk substitutions on the hour mark. There was 3 changes made at that point when he tried to freshen up the midfield. And then we concede within 5 minutes of that happening. Again, though, when we look at the lineup, again, people are pointing to the fact that Yankee wasn't in the squad, Malloy wasn't in the squad, Ambrose wasn't in the squad. These are players that Jimmy Thelin did sign. And again, another comment that have been coming in regards to Jimmy, Sean McDonald saying, should he be allowed to put his own stamp on the team at the expense of the academy? I know that is a hot topic right now, the development of that academy and homegrown players coming through into the team as well. But I know Phil, who's hopefully going to be back on this show on Wednesday, is always one to say, well, why risk those young players when it is, I'm not saying it's a toxic environment at Pittodrie yet, but it's very close to getting to that stage. And Gary Farker also backing similar up. saying we're very boring right now. We were told we'd get fast-flowing, attacking football, chopping and changing this team every week. Isn't working. But Jimmy just isn't working either. We'll maybe come on to the latter part of that from Gary a little bit later. And again, can't be bothered also saying what happened to Jimmy being the type of manager to give youth a chance. Again, project signings that we've got are those youth players. Again, not being given a chance. I was again surprised once again to see Nicholas Milanovic not given minutes off the bench this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially even as a sub, I'd have thought, the fact he was fresh, having not played the previous week. I know he'd travelled from the other side of the world, but I thought that would have been like a wild card to bring on. And we haven't seen much of him yet in the grand scheme of things, but I've been quite impressed with what I've seen. And there are players there that have had a good run at it now. I mean, Keskinen, we've spoken before about the amount of football he's played, and I think that's beginning to show. Aushish, I've got to say, I'm not having him at this moment in time. I hope it turns for him, but he's featured in most of the games so far, and I've not seen enough, to be quite blunt.
I don't think that's... struggle to argue on that one as well. I mean, other than the goal line clearance in the first half on Saturday, he's not really done much noticeable. He's a flair player that does the odd trick and fancy step over, but when the going gets tough, he goes missing.
He certainly has been hiding, I think, in a lot of those tough moments. And on the contrary, I know we've not seen anything remotely like the best of him yet, but I think Carlson, you can tell he wants to engage in the game and always show for the ball and whip in crosses. I think it might just be one where he benefits from coming out of the team for a bit. I hope he goes on to make a big impact for us. But as has been mentioned already, when you've got signings that people are excited about and other options on the bench, you shouldn't be going to players that are just not producing constantly in the hope that it turns for them. There has to be an element of perform or lose your place.
Yeah, and I think obviously the club had a behind closed doors match in midweek, as me and Callum discussed on Wednesday when we were live, against the team you formerly covered in Ross County, to give those players some minutes. And again, as Stephen says here, he was talking about having two teams. Again, Stephen Gunn, who's now departing the club, also spoke about the club being prepared to battle on various fronts this season. Well, that's one front that we're out of already, and I mean, the fight that we're putting up in the league so far is barely even worth talking about. So again, it's not for me, as much as the manager can come in for some criticism, I think the players shouldn't be devoid of any criticism, and neither should the board as well, because the whole club needs to look at how they prepared and we approached this season. This isn't all on Jimmy Thelin, and I think some of the quite telling factors is, for as much as the responsibility of getting results will fall at the manager's door, unfortunately, if the axe is to fall, it's a wider look that needs to be taken, in my personal opinion. And I think that's why when you look at some of the polls around should he stay or should he go or be given more time, there's not a wide gap in these polls. Again, Colin Gale replied to our tweet before we came live to say he'd ran one. It was 55% go, 45% more time. I think other similar pages, it's not like it's up into the 70s, 80s yet. There's still a belief and hope that he can get this right.
Without a doubt, it's just the stage we're at leaves him vulnerable to facing the consequences if something bad really happens. Let's say in this next week, we've got 2 tough away games coming up. We've not been on the road in quite some time, and as I say, if we take a tanking in either of those or both of them, that leaves him in a vulnerable position, I would say. But
I know we were speaking about it last night, but I do just wonder if he sees out at least till that first weekend in October, obviously with the European game coming out as a minimum. I do get what you're saying in terms of if we suffer heavy defeats.
Yes, I'm thinking about a horrible result,
But if we go back to some of his comments, you've obviously listened to what he said on Red TV. I've listened to what he said to Tyrone on BBC Scotland, and I think both follow a very similar, train of thought. He speaks about the fact that this team this team is maybe very harsh, but it feels like it's true right now that they can't do the basics. And we didn't do the basics right during the game. And if we can't do the basics, we can't get the results. I think he's an excellent manager in terms of defending his players. He's not out there throwing them under the bus, or individuals certainly under the bus as well. But again, if he's delivering tactics that the players aren't understanding, it can't all be on Jimmy Thelin. And this then comes back to the other side of the scale is, where do we go, or what benefit does it happen for us if we do get rid of Jimmy at this stage?
Yeah. I personally, this is not always the case and quite often isn't, but to be fair, I quite like the way that he was coming across in his interviews after the game yesterday. The way he was speaking, because that was kind of my impression of the game as well. I just strip it right back to basics, and spells in the second half, just how much running Motherwell did, and how lost we looked, and guys not showing for the ball, guys not helping each other out. That there was a stark difference between the two sides and what they were putting into. You would have been hard pushed to know that was a cup quarter final with a trip to Hampden at stake.
Yeah.
There was no feeling of that around the ground at all, and certainly not, on the field from our point of view. I'm glad that he flagged that up, and he's not digging anyone out individually, but he certainly had a collective go at his players, I would say, and highlighted that things are not going well just now, and it's just not happening. But that in itself kind of indicates to me that the message isn't getting through, because we've seen it in previous weeks. He has said, after the Falkirk game, for example, he told us that it's a crucial 2-week period for us to use this international break. And I thought the Livingston game was a slight improvement, but it still didn't have the feeling of this is happening for us here today. I think we've started some games quite well, and I thought on Saturday it was clear he had worked on Motherwell, who have a very defined style of play that has drawn a lot of plaudits. It was the first time I'd seen them personally in a live game. I'd obviously seen highlights and everything, but I thought the way that we were closing them down looked as if training and work had gone into that. But then when the game kind of goes a bit more end to end, and it you get different spells in any course of a game, we at some point we just seem to get taken down a different track altogether, and we just become lost. I also wonder, as I say, I think we started games quite well, but it's following a familiar pattern. There's obviously a problem with the messaging and the ability to adapt to different scenarios in a game, which between manager and players is just not functioning properly, and that's really, really alarming.
On that point, then, do you think the pattern that you allude to there, and the failure to adapt, is Jimmy's possible stubborn approach to changing his style. Again, I've seen a few of you in the comments speak about he needs to ditch this current formation. We'll see if me or Skinner have done that when we pick the Dundee United teams, and maybe adopt a 4-4-2. It's just, yeah, he's stuck in his own ways, and that we've seen how that sometimes ends up for managers.
Yeah, he tries to personify calmness. Certainly with his demeanour, he doesn't wave his arms around and yell instructions at players. Clearly a manager that sort of speaks in a way where he's a trust the process kind of manager, if that makes sense. You get them from time to time, and that comes with calmness as well. But the record is terrible, and as I say, I did like the way that he addressed it post-match. I think he acknowledges where we're at, but it's just that messaging that's giving me cause for concern right now, and whether his ability to adapt to what is required for us in the here and now in Scottish Premiership football is correct. Ultimately, I'm not there yet, but I'm increasingly becoming doubtful.
Yeah, and we'll come on to that, because as we had quite a good chat last night, venting some of our feelings to maybe make this slightly easier. We're both probably at different stages in our opinions on Jimmy Thelin, and again, to pick up on that point around demeanour that you mentioned, Robbie Henratti picking up that point as well, that his demeanour is shining through on the pitch, and yeah, he's not a very reactive manager.
No,
certainly if you compare him to some of the others, the likes of Neil Lennon, who I can't wait for his name to start being banded about if Jimmy does find himself out the job as well. And again, when you look at Jimmy's coaching staff, can't be bothered picking up on the fact that when one of Jimmy's coaching staff left last season, that's kind of coincided with this poor run of form. He asks why Jimmy not replaced him. Maybe he didn't want to, maybe he trusted the coaching staff that he had, but could he, as again someone else has said in the comments, and apologies for not finding that comment in particular, as the comment section on tonight's show is quite busy, was he maybe the brains behind the operation? But again, I want to pick up on something that you mentioned there about the intensity, or certainly lack of intensity, that is blessing our performances currently.
Yeah,
the Livingston game showed glimpses in the final third. We created opportunities. This weekend saw our best two opportunities fall to centre backs. Nicky Devlin's late header glancing the crossbar, and Matt Knooster showing a real lack of composure, potentially finding the crossbar when it was probably easier to find the back of the net. But those were the only two chances of note that I can certainly recall. Once again, I feel we've come away without testing the goalkeeper from a home game. As I said to you last night, 6 shots on target in our last 3 home games. I don't actually recall if we even had one in yesterday's game. Is really not great. And, Motherwell potentially showing signs of what we were like in the first few months against Jimmy Thelin, a team with pace, creativity. To be honest, we were actually lucky that finished 1-0 yesterday.
If Motherwell had a striker, a proper striker on their hands, then that could have been embarrassing for us. Yes, we hit the woodwork twice, but both from set pieces. Whereas you contrast that with the chances that Motherwell were creating on a regular basis throughout the match, and there was a link between, that ability to create chances and, the way that they were playing. Their style of play was leading to that. So, when it comes to the chances we created, again, it's not formed from any ingenuity in our play, and there's no imaginative thinking that's bringing about opportunities. And just to link back to the previous point, I didn't want to butt in, but in regards to the coaching staff, think I'm right in saying it was Bajrami that left, wasn't it? And
that's right. Yeah.
Am I right in saying he was the one that was kind of tasked with, dealing with the attacking side of it, being a former winger himself? I think that was his domain, really. So it's interesting that no one's been brought in to do that, because clearly Jimmy moulded his coaching staff together. He cherry picked it, and it included Peter Levin. On the basis of the fact he'd worked with the squad for a long time prior to that, and was a good sort of conduit between the players and a new regime. But when you do cherry pick your staff and delegate certain tasks, and then there's an unforeseen change, then it does seem strange that hasn't been addressed. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but
again, for me, it's obviously that trust. Again, there was question marks around what Peter Levin's future would be like when Jimmy came in. I think he kind of touched on Peter's influence and felt comfortable, and again, it's going to be one of those decisions that falls on the manager. At the end of the day, if he's comfortable with his coaching staff, you're not going to bring in a coach just for the sake of it to replace. Potentially it was leaving the door open in case there was opportunity for a return as well. But again, you pointed that out, and you've covered it there last night, where you said that the two opportunities we've discussed both came from set pieces. Again, one of the first times you came on the podcast this season, you spoke about the kind of time it would need for the front three, front four to learn and start clicking into gear. How long does that take? Because we're about 4 or 5 games since you said that, and we're still not any closer to seeing that click.
Well, no, I mean, we haven't scored a goal. So, yes, the point I was making was along the lines of, you do need time to knit that attacking play together and for relationships to strike up, all the rest of it. But you expect a goal to have been scored by now. Christ. And, on the basis of what you saw yesterday, do you feel like, because sometimes you can be in this position and be like, we're going to take 5 off someone soon. It's coming. We can feel it. Are you getting that sense?
Absolutely not. And I think, I don't even get the sense of when we're scoring, let alone winning. And, Finlay posted in one of the group chats I'm in, I don't know if you've come across that message from him, mutual friend of both of ours, where he said, it's 8 wins out of the last 39 games for Jimmy Thelin. That includes the cup final on penalties. So out of the other 7 victories, 4 of them have come against Elgin, Dunfermline, Queen's Park and Morton. So, in terms of Premiership opposition, we've only beaten them 3 times out with the cup final. And then, again, looking at the goals scored this season, domestically, we've only scored competitive goals against Morton. We've not scored against Premiership opposition this season. Again, even if you look back to the pre-season, again, Cove. Yes, people say, well, we scored a couple against FCSB, but domestically is obviously where it's coming to. It's not great.
Yeah. No, not at all. No, I mean, that is, when you lay it bare like that, that is really stark. The fact, you reeled off 5 teams from the lower leagues that we've beaten that form part of that, 8 wins and however many it would be, 40 odd, did you say? Or
I think Finlay's message said 39. I know Kaiser in the comments is saying it's 10 wins out of 40, but regardless, it's not great. But I mean, at the end of the day, he won the Scottish Cup. He gave us a moment a lot of us will never forget as well. So he has to be given credit and praise and thanks for that as well.
Of course. I mean, there's no denying that buys him time and an element of the benefit of the doubt.
Time.
But I think once we're at this stage now, where the drop off from that has been so rapid, really, and I mean, I go back to the very start of the season. Actually, I mean, going into the Hearts game, I hadn't been to any of the pre-season matches, but I just thought we looked so under prepared for that
Mhm.
opening league game of the season. I know teams like Hearts and everyone else that wasn't in Europe have the benefit of playing in the League Cup group stage. I think that's benefited us in the past, even when we've not been in
Yeah,
Europe.
totally.
You'd always rather be in Europe, but it really reinforces the need to make sure that you use that extra time that you've got to your advantage. And yeah, as you say, we've been waiting on our season starting really ever since. How long do we give him? I mean, my emotions were high at full time yesterday. I was saying to people around me, I think he's got a week to save his job.
Yeah.
I'm not quite, 24 hours later, I think I would tweak the wording of that, I think a week, given that we've got 2 away games, I think he's running the risk of, as I've mentioned earlier, being in a really vulnerable position if he takes a hiding in either of these games. I mean, say it's a scalping against Dundee United on Tuesday. I'm not sure I would expect him to be sacked straight after that, but then if there's no improvement against Motherwell, clearly there's a European game coming up, and then you finish against Dundee. In these next 2 games, I think these next 2 are the crucial ones where the direction of travel will be a lot clearer as to where we're going and what we're going to do, even if the decision isn't made until the international break.
Yeah.
And it ultimately just puts real pressure on him to come up with a real statement victory in multiple games that are coming up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's multiple games coming up, but of course, with a surprising result at Ibrox on Saturday as well, it does mean we have a week off at the start of November. Now that trip to Ibrox will be postponed as a result. So we will get a break at least.
So we have to wait even longer to play Rangers, because that was the thing that was annoying me after the Livingston game, was looking at the fixture list and realising it's not until November that we actually play them. That's about the one opportunity that we would benefit from right now.
Well, you say that, but then you see the kind of level of performance we're putting in, and we probably embarrass ourselves in a game that, again, fans would go into expecting. But I want to come back to that comment you made there about the direction of travel this team's potentially going on, and what we need to see from them in the next kind of couple of games, because it links into a couple of things that I've written down in my notes. So bear with me whilst I try and make this point, and then you can have your say on it. So in terms of the direction of travel, then, what are you looking for out of that? Is that results? Is that performances? Is it a combination of both? Because it's also could be linked to the recruitment side of things, because I think, as I've said already, I think off the field we've got the recruitment to an extent correct. We've not seen all those players that have been signed, but as yet they haven't clicked. We also, how long do you give that team to click? Because if you then change the manager's going to see something different to what our current one's doing. How often can we do that? That then comes back to the weekend's performance, where I thought in the second half, at times, I thought there was players that were a little bit going into hiding. I thought Nicky Devlin, every time he looked for the ball, he was kind of asking for it when he was behind a man. Alexander Jensen, I mean, I think once again he was blowing before the 70-minute mark. And again, as you've already spoken about there, the substitutions meant he couldn't be rested. I wonder if Gyamfi hadn't gone off with the knock or the pull-up that he had, if Nicky might have replaced Alexander Jensen. So what are you looking from then for the direction of travel?
Yeah. By the phrase direction of travel, what I mean is, and to link it to something we saw last season, is, are we going to do a Hibs, basically? Or maybe to rephrase that, do we put ourselves in a position where it gets, we get so pegged back in the league that we have to do a Hibs? Because that's not something that, we need we should be needing to do. I know it's not really happened under Jimmy yet, but we need to be capable of putting a bad result behind us and moving on to the next game, rather than this kind of streaky form that we've shown, whether good or bad. And if we put ourselves in a position where we have to go and string together an unbeaten run of whatever it was, I mean, it was almost 20 odd games, was it, or one defeat in 20 maybe? It was along those lines. If that's what's going to be required for us to have a decent season, then I think we'll know by a period quite shortly ahead of us that that's not a good position to be in, and we're better off making the change. That's kind of what I mean by that, if that makes sense. I probably didn't explain that very well.
No, it does, and I just wonder, Graham Gibbs says we won the cup final by being pragmatic. Please be pragmatic in the next two games. It'd be madness to keep doing the same thing. And I think, Graham does make a good point on that as well. I was trying to find the comment that come in about Dave Cormack and the fact that they don't feel that Dave Cormack's going to react currently, because, the board are certainly sticking by this 3-year project.
Yeah.
Do you think that wording might come back on the board?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, Dave's a businessman, and Dave can't be faulted for the amount of money that he's invested in the 3-year project. And that, is a credit to him, the fact that he's invested in something he believes in. But if you invest in something that isn't producing any sort of return for it, then as a businessman, yes, obviously you want it to work and you've got patience, all the rest of it. But, there does have to be a point, doesn't there? And to be fair, I mean, that's maybe where the Scottish Cup does become so crucial, because, for Dave, that'll have made up everything that he spent on the club worthwhile, I'm sure. Just that euphoria, that moment, the scenes on Union Street, all the rest of it. So in a sense, he maybe has, it all depends on his personal sort of outlook on that. But
could it also, as Ross Duncan says, maybe depend on the new director of football and what their vision or thoughts are as well?
Yeah. I'm led to believe that conversations on the recruitment of the new director of football are going to be taking place this week. Don't expect an appointment to be made this week, but they're certainly, because Stephen Gunn indicated in the summer that he was going to be moving on. The board are prepared for this, so the process of appointing a successor is, one that they're kind of ready for now that Stephen's moved on. So. There's a bit of talk going on, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see whether Jimmy is involved in that as well, and if the board are having conversations about the director of football, against the backdrop of recent poor form, does Jimmy's future become a talking point amidst that as well? I mean, these are all normal things that are spoken about at board meetings, but there's certainly a lot going on, and be interesting to see just how everything marries up in the next week or two.
It will, and the next couple of games certainly are going to take on a huge level of importance after obviously the failure to pick up victory in any of our 3 last outings, obviously, let alone score a goal in those as well. As you said, you've had 24 hours to calm down from your thoughts on Jimmy just now. There's a lot of you.
Was that bad? Was that?
Actually, I don't even think it's 24 hours, if we're being honest, how long it was last night. Where are you now?
Last night.
Yeah, no. Yeah. We can blame Liam for that. Where do you stand on the manager currently? because I think, again, listening to Tyrone yesterday speak to Jimmy Thelin, and Jimmy come out and said, I think him and the players had a long and frank chat after the game that they need to go away and look at themselves in the mirror. The coaching staff needs to do that, but also so does he. They all need to take a look at their individual responsibilities and take accountability, which is, as we've already kind of discussed on Jimmy, he tends to do and doesn't throw those players under the bus. So I can't wait for Ryan, the Evening Express, I'm sure, to run an article tomorrow that the players know what they need to do as they cross the line at Tannadice, and they'll show the fans that all that usual bullshit that we hear when we're on a poor run and then we inevitably lose the next game. But Tyrone used a great word in his interview, that is there maybe a sense of kind of delusion at the club currently, and hearing him say that word really hit home, because it probably sums up how I personally feel right now, and it is a bit of disillusion with the club. There's absolutely no argument. I've mentioned it already. That was the greatest moment in supporting this club for me, that 24th of May this year, seeing Graham Shea Scottish Cup. What a feeling. It makes all the shit worthwhile. The good and the bad combined for that one moment. But currently, and worryingly for me, is I'm at a loss at where we are going at this moment in time. I really wanted to work for Jimmy, because of the good times he's brought. But the biggest concern I have is the lack of identity within this team. Lack of style, as we've already discussed. We were promised this free-flowing attacking football. We've not seen that for a long time. And it's questioning the direction. We've failed to build and carry any momentum through from that cup final victory. It feels like we're a little bit flatlining, and I don't mean as a squad, potentially the manager, and failing to capitalise on any of that momentum and feel-good factor. And I know Graham Gibb in the comment also mentioned, surely the club must have looked at the crowd at the weekend and thought, that's a bit alarming. But then again, Aberdeen at this stage, obviously it was a long weekend in Aberdeen. I've never had good home cup crowds for the cup quarterfinals.
No. What was the crowd in the end? I didn't see the final figure. Was it just over 10,000 or?
I think it was just over 10,000, but I mean,
no, I had a hollow
probably right. It's 10,500, so we'll go with around that.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Just to go back to the interview. I didn't hear Tyrone's interview. What was it? Delusion or disillusion? Did you say?
Disillusion.
Disillusion. Yeah. No, I mean, that's natural, and you didn't expect anything else. I'm not one for sort of booing while the game's going on, but I wouldn't have expected anything else come the full-time whistle. I think that's something that the supporters are entitled to do. So, I can understand that. Where are we? Where are we going? I suppose is a pertinent question. Clearly, confidence is a big factor in it. I'm not making any sort of excuses on behalf of what's going on, but clearly it's a massive low just now, and that doesn't help. But then it's about trying to find the best way through that and utilise your resources in a way that makes it more likely that you are going to come out of it. That's the bit that's alarming me, is how we're reacting to the slump, so to speak, and how we're dealing with it, and that does just look a little bit all over the place, if I'm being honest.
And I guess the question is how do we look at it, and how do we stop the rot and correct it? And
an example would be maybe. Oh, sorry.
On you go.
Sorry.
No, on you go.
No, an example could be you really draw upon your experienced players and change the team, go for something totally different, maybe a bit more pragmatic, as has been mentioned before, just to really try and get that result over the line, even if that's not the solution long term. It's about adapting to what's needed in the here and the now. We're in a very different position to what we were after the cup final. after 14 games last season. Times change, things change. Opposition teams adapt, and they have clearly, capitalised on a vulnerability in what we are doing, and so we've got to come back with something ourselves. That's the bit that I'm not seeing enough of.
No, it's not. And again, the comment that was on screen there from John Kelo saying, he felt it was a 50-50 game, to be fair. I'll disagree on that, John. Personally, I thought Motherwell were by far the better team, and were fully deserving of that victory. But as he goes on to say, with us not really looking like any confidence inside the box, if we won 1-0, would the narrative be different? I mean, obviously, I think it would be different had we won 1-0 yesterday or found any sort of win. But again, there's also been comments coming in tonight about the football being boring, people getting fed up, people choosing to go and watch other games in the area instead of going to Pittodrie, whether that's price or, again, fed up with how things are currently. So I think this falls further than the narrative being different had we won. But again, probably going back to what you were speaking about in terms of direction of travel, a win is so vital for me. I'm looking at that European game right now. I know people will probably be thinking, I don't care about Europe. I heard the comment on Sports Sound where someone texted Kenny McIntyre and said that we're in relegation, we're in serious concerns of relegation based on that. I'm not at that stage where I'm losing sleep over us getting relegated.
Yeah.
Are you at that point yet?
No, I don't think I'm there yet. But hey, I mean, I would say the main time I felt that was when Mark McGee was in charge. And that took until about December, I think, before the change was made. I think that's the main time I would look back on and think, geez, we're in real trouble here. I mean, Europe's important for a variety of reasons, but one of them, in the circumstances we're currently in, it's a tough group that we've got, or a tough run of fixtures. We've got the potential to take a right battering in terms of that confidence. If we don't adapt to what's required in those European matches, it probably will, or it not probably will, but it could come to a stage where, with a couple of the European games to go, it's not on for us to qualify, and it becomes a bit of a distraction. I hope that's not the case, but that in itself is just not a great position to really be looking at Europe with. We really need to try and use Europe to actually have an uplifting impact on our domestic form.
Does it become a distraction?
That could happen. Sorry?
Does Europe become a distraction based at this moment in time, because of where we are in the league?
Depends on how the campaign goes. If we clock up points early in that group of fixtures, then no, I would say it actually becomes, something a bit like the cup run that we went on last season, where it's a change of focus. It's exciting for fans, and they'll travel abroad, really hopeful. And obviously there becomes the age-old debate about how you transfer that to playing Premiership football on the Sunday, and how do we adapt to that? That's another thing that we just have to come through. This is the position that we've put ourselves in, so we need to deal with it. And as I say, I don't think squad depth is the problem.
No, it's not, and I definitely don't think squad depth is a problem. And I've said I don't think quality within this squad is the problem either. The problem is we're not getting a tune out of them now. As much as that will fall on the manager, I think the players also have to take some responsibility, because they all spoke so highly of Jimmy, last season when we won the cup. It's the best manager they've ever worked for. Works meticulously to get all the planning right. Why is it going wrong? And again, SKC in the comments, he's taking last season out of it, saying it's 0 wins in 4. None of last season's results impact this season's table, which is a fair point.
That's fair.
And, again, Gary Farker responded saying, well, it's the same manager. But again, credit to SKC, because he says, when does that counter reset? Because you win the next 5 games, it's 15 and 45. You could view that positively or negatively. So
yeah,
it depends what side of the fence you're on right now, doesn't it?
Aye, but if you're to do that, then at least you've shown the signs that you have taken that bad run, parked it, and learned from it, and you're on an upward trajectory again.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that we've really honestly been able to say for quite some time. So, if we get one result over the line, it's all about how we kick on from that.
Yeah,
definitely got the squad to do it. As I say, the squad is there, but to have picked up next to nothing so far this season, yeah, it's just horrible, isn't it?
It is, and I think Graham kind of probably sums up a lot of feeling within the support with this comment where he says it'd be easier to keep the faith if you could see progression or structure. It's dull to watch and there appears not to be a plan. I thought we would play a set structure with different players. And I think, really, Graham, you've summed up my feelings well in that sense, and maybe some of those that are listening as well. I'll just come up into a few of the other comments as well. John Kelo saying people are very negative. This is the formation that the fans wanted. Flying wingers with attacking lineups, but we're losing. Do fans want 5-4-1 formation and ground out a few more wins? Stephen wants the system ditched. It's not just this season. Last season was the same, throwing on subs to do the same thing as those already on. Again, you've come across that point as well. Skinner, David McLennan saying we seem pretty disconnected from back to front, slow with no penetration. Nisbet at the weekend pretty isolated with nothing being created for him to work off of. John Doe, one of those remaining extremely positive, saying plenty of bedwetters tonight. JT will turn this around. He's got the full faith as well. Andrew
Good
Casey,
on you, John. Hey.
Yeah, Andrew Casey says we've got no identity. I'm not sure how we're meant to be playing. I don't think the players do. It's worrying how little Jimmy has learned about the league with 15 months in the dugout.
Right.
El Silbon says he likes JT. I like the squad we have, but it really needs to change shape and tactics. The dismal run should reflect that. Again, Graham Gibb also picking up the point of the job of the manager is to get the best out of the players that he has. Thelin is failing in his most important part of the job. So, yeah, I think, look, there is upset, is fair to say. Discontent, is that maybe a better word? At where we are right now. And the show rolls on to Dandies on Tuesday night. Skinner, is that potentially one of the worst places we could be going at this moment in time, against a fan base that seem to be obsessed with us, a manager that's consistently keen to prove a point against us, and probably given the way the last game of the season ended at Dandies, this game carries a little bit of extra needle, spice, use whatever adjective you want going into it as well. And now, given the run we're on, importance as well.
Yeah, definitely. United look to be a good side this season. I've not seen them live, I don't think, but it's going to be a tough game for all the reasons you mentioned. But that's an opportunity for us to really show up when it matters as well, and that's the way it has to be approached. It doesn't, these factors can quite quickly become excuses if it doesn't go well for us. But we simply have to compete. And as I say, we've got the squad to do it, and we just have to try and dig a performance out of somewhere. It's not been evident to this point. Maybe coming away from Pataudry might help us, just a change of scene. I'm clutching at straws, perhaps, but there will be a good atmosphere down there, and if United come and have a right go at us, then maybe that'll play into our hands as well. Mind you, I thought the same about Motherwell based on the way that they have played so far this season, their style, I was convinced that would actually help us. But again, for those basics that the manager highlighted, if you're not putting the sufficient running into the game, then it's not going to happen for you. So let's hope they did those words.
I think you're right to highlight the fact that it could play into our hands, but you then also took the words out of my mouth saying that was the hope and expectation for the Motherwell game, that their style would play into our hands. The problem right now is our quality in the final third. Our quality, our lack of quality. Just need to look at Topi Keskinen's performances this season as an example of that. And Nisbet has been working off of next to nothing in his 2 appearances, and you could say the same for Lazetic. So we don't have the quality currently. So I want to go and speak about the teams that we've picked for the game on Tuesday now. So I think goalkeeper picks itself. I'm assuming you've put Dimitar Mitov in.
Don't think Mitov's done anything wrong. We'll go with him.
Right. So we'll stick with that. Do you want to go through your defence that you've gone for this weekend?
Midweek. Fine. Back 4: Devlin, Dorrington, Canuster, Gyamfi.
Yep. Same here, although I've put Shinnie in brackets for Gyamfi. Depending on what his injury status is. But if he's fit enough to start, I've gone for Gyamfi as well. So we're 5 from 5, same here. I don't think that the centre backs have done much wrong.
No.
And Gyamfi's looked solid. I just think Jensen could do with a rest, potentially help his confidence as well.
I think he's coming into the team probably with a bit of fuel behind him after the red card as well. Perhaps wasn't his best game when he came on Saturday, as you alluded to, but I guess he was playing left back, and coming on as a sub probably isn't ideal for a full back. But yeah, I think it's time to. We've got the opportunity to freshen that up. Devlin's a solid option. Let's go for it, I would say.
Yeah.
And experienced, which we probably need right now.
And then if we look towards midfield, so we've both gone for 4 at the back. What are you going for in midfield? Are you going for a 4 or a 5?
I suppose it's almost a 5, but it could be a 3. You can dress up this formation. It's probably a bit of a 4-1-4-1 I've kind of gone for. So I want to see Shinnie holding, anchoring, and I want to see Armstrong and Clarkson ahead of him. Just legs in that midfield and more ability to run with the ball and pick out passes. But Shinnie back a little bit with the emphasis on, shutting out the United threat from midfield as well.
Okay. Who else fills in your midfield, or you're going maybe for a front 3?
Well, then I suppose it would be a front 3 of sorts, or 2 wingers with Milanovic on the right. Coming in fresh as a bit of a wild card, you could say, and Carlson on the left. Yeah.
Okay. And that's so the same.
It could be a 5. Could be a 5.
You've gone similar to myself in that sense, where you could make this a midfield 5 or push it up to. I've gone 4-4-1-1 kind of for my formation.
I want to see Milanovic and Carlson up really high, to be fair. That's the attackers.
You've hit the nail on the head there in terms of Milanovic. His freshness is important for this game. And I think Topi desperately needs a spell on the bench. He's just not producing right now. My centre of midfield, I've also got Stuart Armstrong starting. I've got Leighton Clarkson playing in the 10, which will maybe be unpopular, but that's to allow Ante Palaversa to come into the midfield. I'm fully aware Jimmy will reinstate Sivert Nilsson into that midfield, giving him a rest. I guess the other argument is you could put in Dante in that number 10 position, but to be honest, for as much as I've been championing Dante, I was pretty unimpressed with his contribution.
Aye. Last couple of games, he's not been quite as impactful off the bench, I would say.
He's not a left winger though, so of course he's not going to be impactful off the bench. Which is why I'm questioning Milanovic. So yeah, I've gone personally Palaverse and Armstrong to be that midfield two with Clarkson. Probably you could have him as that holding midfielder or quarterback role, as Barry Robson dubbed him, or push him a little bit further forward. So I assume both of us have then got Nisbet leading the line.
This is actually the biggest quandary that I've got. I'm torn between Nisbet or Lazetic because I've liked what I've seen of Lazetic so far. He's got more presence than Nisbet, and just when confidence is low at the minute, Nisbet obviously is a well-known entity and someone that will get us goals. But if it's not going well for us, then he does become a bit detached from the game. He's a penalty box striker, which is worth its weight in gold. But I have a feeling I'd quite like to see Lazetic get a run out from the start because we've not seen that yet, have we? He's just come off the bench so far.
Yeah, I mean, not in the League Cup or the league. Obviously, started that game against Bucky, but
I'll not be disappointed either way with that one. I'll be happy either way. But I just thought let's just change it up a bit and bring a bit more presence and work rate to the forward line at a time when guys have been feeding off scraps. I
mean, your argument is it's a bit of an unknown quantity for Dundee United. That they'll know what to expect and what Kevin Nisbet can offer. People have asked for Jimmy to freshen up the team, so if he goes with either of our teams or his own stamp on that freshening up, like people are going to find criticisms with our teams or Jimmy's team. I'm under no illusion that won't be the case. So he's got a difficult job, made more so by the start that we've had to this season. And I do think Tuesday we really need to be taking something from the game just to install some sort of confidence, some sort of belief into the fan base. Obviously, we've got the European fixture a week on Thursday. We've got two important domestic games before a double header at home, obviously Shakhtar and Dundee. 4 games, really. Some will say 4 games to save his job. Some will say 4 games to really kind of show what he can do. And for me as well, 4 games for this squad to show they have a bit about themselves and actually have a bit of belief in the manager as well. Because undoubtedly, if performances don't go the right way, the talk of do the squad believe in the manager will start to resurface again. But look, I know for a Sunday evening, Sundays are normally as depressing as they are ahead of a return to work on Monday. Unfortunately, Jimmy Thelin and Aberdeen aren't helping that mood right now. So I know we could all do with a bit of positivity. Let's hope that starts on Tuesday night, and we really are hoping, and it is the hope that kills us. Wednesday night is when we will next be back. I'll be joined by Callum, and Phil will be making his return, so it'll be a full squad on Wednesday night. Full strength. Imagine that, Jimmy Thelin.
Absolutely.
Let's see if that makes a difference. Because having 3, I was going to say half decent podcasters will make a difference to the results on the pitch. But thank you everyone for joining us tonight on the show, and of course all the contributions in the comment section. Remember to leave a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel here on YouTube, follow us on your audio platform as well. And again, thanks to Andy Skinner for ably stepping in and articulating his point of view on the current situation at Pittodrie. Until next time, we will all see you then.